Hello everyone, and welcome to today's lecture. Today we're going to talk about counseling in reproductive health. In the picture shown on your screen, there is a couple, presumably a lady and a gentleman, who are having a discussion and they seem to be quarreling. And seated before them is a counselor with a pen and paper trying to resolve the issues that these two have come with. This is typical to what happens in the place of work. When you are working, you're likely to meet people coming to you, seeking services, seeking help for you to be able to guide them on how to go about particular issues. They could be issues related to reproductive health or otherwise, but today we shall limit ourselves, this lecture limits itself to looking at issues in reproductive health. Issues that deal with problems that can be encountered when people are relating, and this could be family planning issues, this could be issues to do with fertility, etc. We will quickly define counseling as a facilitative process in which the counselor works together with the client to be able to sort their problems, to be able to help them to be able to come up with a solution out of issues that they could be having. And therefore, we see that it is a special helping relationship whereby the counselor uses specific skills to be able to assist the clients to be able to develop knowledge, to be able to have the know-how, to be able to have emotional acceptance over issues that they're having, and to be able to be equipped with the resources to be able to sort out issues that they could be having when they've come to seek help. And this is according to Gillis, Sikena, and Bissett, as shown on the screen. Now, what is the counselor's role? The counselor gives the clients an opportunity to be able to discover their issues, to be able to, once they have discovered their issues, they'll be able to sort them out and they'll be able to feel satisfied. Second role is to help the clients to be able to cope with the crisis that could be affecting them in their relationship. And we see this is very, very important, especially if they are coming to you as a couple, as we had seen in the earlier picture. And the third thing is that the counselor is able to help the client to be able to utilize the resources that they have within them, deep within them, for them to be able to see what is the best way forward. And always a client will come to you with a problem, but inbuilt in the client, there is a solution. And you as the counselor, you need to be able to help the client to sort out and be able to discover what solutions they have inbuilt in them. So the aims of counseling, therefore, is to help the client to manage their problems, to be able to use the skills that they have that they are not using fully. And secondly, is to help the clients to become more effective self-helpers. In this case, we are sorting out the client's issue today, but tomorrow we expect that they'll be able to sort out their own issues. So we are building in them a capacity of growth to be able to help sort out their issues even in the near future. There are so many types of counseling, but this lecture limits itself to counseling in reproductive health. And I've looked at this into, and I've divided the types of counseling into three. We have number one, individual counseling. Secondly, we have couple counseling. And third, we have family counseling. Under individual counseling, a client would come to you with issues, with different unique needs that are related to this person. It could be probably a contraceptive issue that has gone, that has not gone well with them. It could be probably, it's an issue that they have been having about maybe a disease, a reproductive tract infection that has been disturbing them. And so they need a solution to what is really ailing them. And a couple counseling, here you have a couple coming to you, and they could be having an issue that is either marital, it could be a social issue, it could be a medical issue, it could be a fertility issue. Maybe they've stayed together for 3 years, they have not had a baby. And so they're seeking answers to this issue about them not having children. And lastly is what we refer to as family counseling. And under family counseling, we're looking at you as the healthcare provider being able to enter into a dialogue or a discussion to be able to help families, people in a family setup, probably a man, a woman, and probably another person who could be a child in this setup in reproductive health matters. And so you'll be able to give information that goes beyond just the couple, that will be able to affect even the community and the others and the significant others around them. So those are the 3 major types of counseling that this lecture will limit itself into. When you're doing counseling, it's important for you to be able to understand that we have what we refer to as verbal communication skills and non-verbal communication skills. Verbal communication skills would help you as a counselor to be able to communicate effectively with your client. C stands for clarify, L stands for listen very actively, E stands for encourage, A stands for acknowledge, and R, repeat and reflect, so that you can be able to reflect over the issues of this client that they have come with. Under nonverbal communication skills, we have what we refer to as roles. But this lecture will also be looking at it and we'll use the word SOLA, which still has R-O-L-E and S, but in a different arrangement. But what this means is when you're seated with the client, you need, first of all, to be able to relax. You're seated in a relaxed manner. You need to have an open and approachable body posture. You need to lean forward towards the client. You need to have an eye contact, and you need to sit squarely and always smile so the client feels at ease to be able to tell you their issues. And that is how you'll be able to break through to the client and to establish a good rapport with the clients. There are 2 major types of approaches in counseling that this lecture will restrict itself to. We'll have the first acronym, GATHER, which stands for greet the client, ask them their problem, tell them about issues to do, or rather teach them about probably a family planning option, teach them about a reproductive tract infection, that whatever that will be able to answer the question that they have asked under AA. And then you also help them to be able to do that particular activity, which is a family planning option. Probably you'll be able to insert it. You'll be able to give them the pills to take, and then you'll be able to explain more about what you have done. And then lastly, R stands for refer, or give them a return date. Another very important acronym that you need to know is READY. READY stands for rapport building. You need to build rapport with the clients. They need to be very, very comfortable with you. E stands for explore. Explore their issues. Go deep and find out what really brings you to us. And once you found that, then decide, make a decision together with the client on what is the best way forward. And then lastly, implement that decision. And the bigger chunk of this lecture is going to concentrate much more on READY approach more than the GATHER approach. And so at your own time, I'd like you to look at how practically GATHER approaches have been used. And I'll refer you to other YouTube channels for you to be able to check how GATHER approach can be used in reproductive health counseling. The counseling process has four major processes, or rather answers 4 fundamental questions. According to Egan, 1998, these 4 fundamental questions that should be answered, once we've been able to answer these 4 questions, the counseling process would be complete. The first question is, what are the problems? What are the issues? What are the concerns? And what are the undeveloped opportunities that I should be working on as a counselor? And this relates to the current scenario. This client has come to you and they have issues, you need to get the issues, you need to get their concerns. Focus for the counselor is to help the client to break through blind spots. The client could come to you, they have an issue, but they really don't understand how that issue, the details to that issue. So you need to break down that issue further to help the client to be able to see it in totality. And therefore, that is the basic step that you need to begin with to be able to help the client to be able to understand that the problem that they're coming with has several facets that need to be looked at. And maybe the client is just looking at it as a medical issue, but it may go beyond medical issue, as we shall see in other in the subsequent slides, whereby the issue could probably be more of social than even medical. And that is what we're referring to as breaking through the blind spots. Secondly, the client has come to you with the issue. Maybe the issue is, I don't have children. What is the preferred scenario? Preferred scenario would be, I need children. So what does the client need? What do they have, or what do they need to have? And the focus of the client here is to help the client to commit themselves to the agenda of change. So the client is not happy in scenario one, current scenario, and he needs to change. Is the client committed to change? And we can look at this in the context of Jella, 1989, who says that the future does not just exist and cannot be predicted, but it must be imagined. You must take the client through an imagination of the future, of this preferred state of affairs that they need. And they need, therefore, to invent them in their mind. And so that the roadmap is clear, that this is what they want, and they have to get to it. The third thing is strategies. What strategies are you going to use? Strategies are also defined as game plan. What is the game plan? What do we do for us to be able to move from situation A, which is current situation that we don't like, so that we're able to move to situation B, that is the ideal or preferred situation? So the focus of the counselor here is to aid the client to be able to see different ways through which problems can be solved coherent, in a very coherent way, and coming up with smart objectives, simple, achievable objectives. When you talk about smart, we're looking at specific. What is the specific things? What are these specific things are supposed to be measurable so that we shall be evaluating them. As time goes by, we evaluate them, we measure them and see how they are. These objectives have to be achievable, they have to be realistic, and they have to be time bound. That is very important when you are coming up with strategies on how to be able to sort out a client's issue. And lastly, action. How do I make all this happen? The small baby steps that the client makes are very, very important. So the client should not just think that it's going to happen, the problem is going to be sorted at once like that. No, it all takes an effort. And any small effort that the client makes should be appreciated. And the client should be able to know that it is hard work. They need to get committed. They need to put their hand on the plow and move on. They shouldn't just sit back and expect that things would fall in place. The phases in counseling, just like we have looked at the previous slides, there are 4 phases in counseling that we need to be able to understand. And remember the word READY, the acronym READY that we looked at previously. And so in the first phase, we are looking at relationship building. We want to establish a rapport with the client. We're going to see how that is done. Then number 2 is helping the client tell their story. And third is exploring the problems to be able to develop an increased understanding, breaking down through the blind spots. And lastly, action. What are we going to do? And how do we go about doing what we need to do for change to be realized, for the client to move from the current scenario that is not very pleasant to the future scenario that is the ideal scenario. Phase one is about relationship building. And you can see from that picture down there, we can see two people seated, and we are seeing the lady seated very comfortably on a bench with a gentleman, and the gentleman seems to be explaining something. These people are in a good relationship. The environment seems to be just right for the two. And so in phase one is all about relationship building, establishing an open and trusting relationship between the counselor and the client is very, very important, so that the client can be able to open and share. And so as a counselor, you need to make the client to feel very safe and very free to be able to disclose any information that they have. They should be able to be very easy with you. The skills that are central to phase one include listening. Listening is to do with being able to observe your own feelings, to be able to observe the client's feelings, to be able to observe the client's behavior, and to be able to get what they are saying. So it goes just beyond hearing what they are saying, but you need to go even a step further to be able to observe and see, is the body language in conformity with what they are saying? Are your feelings are also being affected? Because we shall be saying that when you're listening to a client, you don't need to sympathize, but rather empathize. Otherwise, you can easily lose it out as a counselor. And so the observational skills that you need to have would help you to be able to look at the behavior of the client, to learn both verbal and non-verbal communication. And you should also be able to distinguish between the client's own observation and inferences, so that you see whether they are valid, whether they are making sense, or the client is just taking things overboard, which should not be the case, and maybe that's where the problem is. But as you do that, please be sensitive to the client so that you don't show them that you are just becoming unreasonable. You need you are the rational one here. You're supposed to tease out issues and be able to look at issues very, very attentively and in a very good way, to be able to note in a very intelligent way what is fiction and what is fact. You need also to be very sensitive to both non-verbal and verbal behavior, as I have mentioned. Another very important skill that is key to this process is tracking skills. You need to track to avoid deviating from normal. And at times you find that the client could start a story and then they start getting distracted. So you need tracking skills for you to be able to bring back the client to what we were saying, and be able to focus your discussion for you to be able to move forward. And we shall see the tracking skills that are important. Phase two is about helping the client to tell their story. Help the client to feel understood. You need to help the client to explore the situation fully. You need to help the client to understand how they feel and why they feel it. And we shall be looking at the skills, the specific skills under this. And the specific skills include accurate empathy. Accurate empathy is to do with trying to understand the client's world as they experience it. You need to be in the shoes of the client, but not be bogged down by now involving your emotional bit. Because if you said involving emotional bit, you move from empathy to sympathy. You need to try and listen to what the client is saying and look at whatever they're saying from their point of view. That is empathy. The other thing is genuineness. You need to be free, you need to be spontaneous, you need to be consistent and non-defensive. If you are not spontaneous, the client might think that you have rehearsed what you're telling them. So you need to listen and bring out issues as they occur, and the client will be able to feel that you are very genuine. And third, respect. Accept the client and their individuality. And here, clients will come to you and they have very different personalities, they have very different values and ways of and different behaviors. You need to respect it. And in case you find that your value system does not agree with the client's value system, then you are free to abandon, not really abandon, but you're free to refer the client to another counselor whose value system you believe is able to correlate very well with the client's value system. Otherwise, you may end up compromising. So you need to declare your interest very, very early in this and under this respect. Otherwise, you may end up pushing your viewpoints to the client and making them now start feeling like you are intruding on their value system. The other very important skill that is paramount to this second phase is concreteness. Concreteness is a matter of identifying specific feelings and avoid being vague. The other thing is minimal verbal responses, and you don't need to respond to everything that the client's saying. You need at times even to just sit there and listen. And silence is also very important. Probing and just encouraging this client to be able to say more is also very, very important. And questions, both open-ended and closed-ended, are also very important in trying to help the client tell their story. Phase 3 is to do with exploring the problems to develop an increased understanding of the problem. And here the goal is to gain, together with the client, a deep understanding of the problems to be able to have a basis for specific action. So you need, therefore, to explore the client's feelings. You need to explore previous suppressed feelings, emotions, attitudes, and behaviors. And in behavioral sciences, we know that there could be probably some suppressed feelings that may have been, that are in this client that could manifest when a problem arises. It could just be in the subconscious level. So you need at this point to explore and see, do we have anything in the subconscious that is probably expressing itself in the wake of the crisis that the client is having, and seeing how to consider options and alternatives to this client's problems. Central skills to this phase include advanced accurate empathy. Advanced accurate empathy goes beyond just accurate empathy. And it is to do with the client being able to understand the emotions behind their feelings. That is basically advanced accurate empathy. Number 2, summarizing. Summarizing is to do with sifting out less relevant material from the relevant material for you to be able to have a focus, for the agenda to be clear. And third is specializing, looking at a big problem and breaking it into various parts. At times, a client would come to you with a lot of issues, and they would say it probably in one sentence, which is very loaded. You need to break it down to specific issues, to specific thematic areas, for you to be able now to deal with each thematic area differently. The fourth skill is clarifying. Clarifying is to do with rephrasing what the client has said in a familiar language. That one is straightforward. And we also have questioning, allowing the clients to clarify, asking the question that the client can be able to explain further what they mean by what they have said. And then we also have what we refer to as challenging or feedback. This one helps to deal with discrepancy, so that you're asking the client to repeat what they said, so that you are able to get it, and the client is able to also understand whatever they have said, that they don't deny. And so you go straight and ask a question, so the client is able to repeat what they said. So you're doing a feedback. You've heard what they've said, and you are challenging them. Do they stand with this particular notion? And they say yes, to avoid denial. Otherwise, the client could easily backtrack on what they have said, knowingly or unknowingly. And we also have immediacy. Immediacy is referring or focusing on the here and now, and discussing directly, opening what is happening, so that now we are looking at things happening. The client is explaining a particular phenomenon that happened to them, but you draw them to their attention and tell them, now, when you feel this, this is what is causing you to have this particular feeling. So discussing, being very immediate and dealing with the issue as it is right now before the client goes on and on and on and on, and then you lose the issue. But you should be careful with this so that you don't also place a lot of immediacy and you make the client lose their focus. It should be used sparingly in some cases where you feel you don't want to lose a particular point that the client has mentioned. Phase 4, which is the last phase, is to do with intervention or action, exploring the interventions to see, are there possible situations to this particular problem? Are there some social aspects that need to be dealt with? Are there some medical aspects that need to be dealt with? Are there some religious aspects that need to be dealt with? So that you're able to choose an alternative, to form an action plan, and you see what needs to be done, where do you need to come in and support the client. And therefore, we're going to look at counseling skills a little bit deeper now from this point moving forward, and we shall look at some of the counseling skills specific or central to phase 4, which is action plan. 1 is non-directive counseling skills, e.g., you need to have basic empathy. We've talked about what basic empathy is, looking at issues in the shoes of the client, advanced empathy, looking at what could be leading to these particular issues, and advanced and self-disclosure. The patient is supposed to know, you're supposed to help the client to disclose or to be able to make a decision whether they want to disclose or not. Immediacy, we've already talked about it, and reflection and interpretation. Here, we're looking at the patient is supposed to, you're supposed to help think through what the client has said, to find the meaning and get the interpretation of what they have said. The next very important skill to phase 4 is directive counseling skill, e.g. giving information. Whatever we say in gather, give the information or helping or tell the client. So you're telling the client about probably safe sex practices. You're telling them about infertility. You're even getting a piece of paper and pen just to draw the reproductive organs and telling them exactly why they're not able to get babies. Could it be because of blocked tubes, etc., etc. And the third one is problem-solving skills. And problem-solving skills is to do with being able to tease out the small issues, being able to discuss the alternatives that are there and the possible solutions that the client can be able to be able to come up with. And so under problem-solving skills, we have these 5 very important things that you need to look at. Define the problem. We need to know what is the problem. And here we use what we refer to as reflective listening. As the client talks, you are reflecting and hearing, trying to get the deeper meaning of what is happening. And then once you've done that, you brainstorm on general solutions. What therefore could be the general solutions to this? And so you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you weigh each solution and seeing the feasibility, the practicability, the merits and demerits to each of the solutions. And then you select the solution that is more feasible, that is more practicable, that is easy for the client to work. And clients are different. What is practical to client 1 may not be practical to client 2, may not be practical to client 3. So you need to know how, therefore, do you select these solutions. Always when you're doing problem-solving skills, you'll always ask yourself these 7 fact-finding questions: who, where, what, when, how, why, and so. And once you've done that, you make SMART objectives, taking actions that can be specific, that can be measurable, that are achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And then you think about reviewing. And this reviewing, once you have started, you've put some plans into action, you're telling the client, hey, now you're having this fertility issue, and specifically for the man, you need to go for, you're supposed to do semen analysis, you're supposed to do maybe check your blood sugar, etc. And for the lady, you also need to do your hormonal profile, among others. So you give specific to each. And then you tell them, can we be able to review this after a week or 2? once you have your results back, so that you're able to see how best to move forward. And so that will lead us now to what we refer to as the monitoring and evaluation of the strategies that you have come up with. Therefore, from now moving forward, I want to look at the basic communication skills in counseling. And these include listening, attending, clarifying, basic empathy, probing, clarification, and reflective commenting and summarizing. Now, under attending, what is attending? Attending refers to how a counselor can be with the client both physically and psychologically. It serves to tell the clients that the counselor is with them and that they can tell him or her their world. It helps the counselor to carefully listen to what the client is saying. At this point, I would like to say, how will you be able to do attending? Remember the acronym that I had given initially, ROLES or SOLAR. How do you attend to a client? Number one, you need to sit and face the client squarely. The body posture has to be right. You need to sit in an open way so that the client can be able to freely see that you are ready to listen to them. So sitting squarely, you can see from this picture, the client is the man seated facing the counselor, and you can see the client is sitting squarely, comfortably, so that now you're not fidgeting, you are not leaning back or leaning to the sides. The client sees that you are composed. So this is one of the basic nonverbal communication skills that will help the client to be able to open up to you. The next one is open posture, adopting an open posture. And in adopting an open posture, avoid crossed arms, avoid crossed legs. And the next picture shows you, figure A shows an open posture, more relaxed attitude. Figure B shows a closed posture. It shows that probably this person, if he's a counselor too bad, is too defensive, or is having a negative attitude. You may not be able to open up to this client, to this counselor. B. But client C, you can see how you can be able to maintain an open posture with the arms open, with the legs apart, so that the client, you send a message that you are confident and there is credibility in what you are doing. And so the sitting posture is normally very important. Or that is open posture. L stands for leaning forward. And you can see the client leans forward, the counselor leans forward. And be very careful, don't lean forward too early, otherwise the client might think maybe you're becoming too nosy. And so you, at the point when the client starts to open up, that's the point now you lean forward. And it shows that you are concerned, you want to be attentive, you want to be close to what the client is telling you. So leaning forward is normally very, very important. It has to be timed, and it normally would help the client even to open up further. E is eye contact. From this picture, you can see the counselor and the counselee. The counselor is on my extreme right, is very keen, is keeping an eye contact with the counselee, and that will just help to draw the client. The client will see you are interested in what they're saying, and so they'll be able to open up to you. But please don't stare at the client, otherwise the patient might feel that you are becoming rude. And then also be also sensitive to the culture. There are those cultures where you don't stare at adults, you don't stare at old people. And so depending on how the cultures are, whatever they allow, that on I you need to be quite, or on E you need to be quite careful so that you don't end up being rude by probably looking at the stare, looking or doing eye contact with someone who is probably older than you or of an opposite sex. It might be construed negatively. But what we mean is, in this case, that eye contact shows that you are listening, you are following. And so it is quite important, a counseling skill. And lastly is R. R is relax. Sit relaxed, be natural with the client. Don't fidget. Don't put on distracting facial expressions when they're talking. And these are very important attending skills that we need to know. The next one is about listening. Listening is normally the ability of the counselor to capture and understand the messages being communicated by the client. And we have mentioned that you need to sit there, use your ears, be able to pick out what the client is saying, but also use your eyes to be able to read the non-verbal communication so that you avoid the situation whereby the client is saying one thing when they mean the other thing. So you need to see a corroboration between what the client is saying and their body language. And the listening skills are normally very, very important. They'll be able to help you to understand the client's verbal message, as I've mentioned, and non-verbal message. Observable physiological features, fidgeting, sweating, crying are some of the things which you're likely to pick. Facial expressions, bodily behavior are some of the things which you can pick from a client when they're talking, just to know how authentic they are at times, because in some places you'll find that if a client is probably lying, some physiological characteristics are likely to come out, which you're likely to pick and say, hey, probably this does not corroborate with what the client is saying. The next the roadblocks to effective listening. What are some of the things that can block effective listening? The first one is allowing internal distractors, e.g., thinking what you're going to say next. Second, judging whether the client, whatever he's saying is right or wrong. And third, filtered listening, having prejudiced ideas about clients. You're looking at the client and you've already judged them. You know, this one is probably is going to say this kind of a thing. Avoid judging, otherwise that would be a roadblock to effective listening. Labeling clients, that diabetic woman, that HIV positive woman. Fact-centered rather than person-centered listening. So you need to listen to facts rather than looking at a person. And then please avoid rehearsing either questions or answers mentally, because that will make you not listen to what the client is saying, because you'll be busy trying to rehearse. Then having red flag listening. In this case, when the client mentions a word, stop very quickly and you start, you look at them, probably you give them a facial expression that shows, hey, whatever you said is bad. When you do that, the client would probably not even continue saying. And also, it will also deny you as the counselor to listen to what the client is saying. And then also avoid sympathetic listening. Just empathize with the client. Don't put your emotions in what the client is saying. Otherwise, you risk becoming a client instead of being the counselor when you start being sympathetic. Basic empathy, as we mentioned, is ability to recognize and acknowledge the feelings of another person without experiencing those same emotions. Use of silence is also another basic communication skills which you need to know. And at times, just listening to what the client is saying. When you are silent, the client would even speak more. You may nod, or you may just use words like continue, so that you leave the client to be able to talk more and more. And it is a very important skill that will help the client to even open up further. Probing and questioning would come in when you feel that the client probably is deviating, and so you want to help them be focused. You also feel like you want to encourage the client to talk for those ones who are not very assertive, or you want to help the client to progress from one point to another point, so you ask a question for them to move from one point to the other, and also to help the client understand themselves and their problems fully. When you probe, the client they'll now understand, okay, probably this is why I am behaving the way I am behaving, because you have probed further. And then the next one is clarification. In clarification, you will ask the question, you ask the patient, or rather the client, to be able to understand. You want to see whether you get a deeper understanding in what they are saying. For example, do I understand you correctly? Are you saying that 1, 2, 3? Do you mean, probably by saying this, do you mean this other thing. For example, let me just show you an example here. You would tell, and this would come under reflective commenting. The client would say, my life is in a mess. I don't know how to get out of where I am. And then you come in and say, so indeed, what you mean that everything you do seems to be going wrong and you feel trapped in a mess. So by doing so, you're able now to get deeper meaning, deeper understanding from what the client is saying. The other skill is summarizing. In summarizing, it's normally very important for you to summarize at the beginning of the session. And then also, it's also important to summarize when you feel that the discussion is getting out of hand. And so you want to give it a sense of direction. And then also when you want to introduce a new phase, or when you want to introduce, or when you want to terminate a particular session, you want to go to another session. Summarizing is very important. Advanced communication skills are quite a few, and I'm going just to mention them. These are advanced empathy, immediacy, helper self-disclosure, information sharing, and suggestive recommendations. Now, under advanced empathy, I think I had explained, is trying to see what are the emotions behind the client's feelings. And therefore, you want to see what is the story behind the story. All right, what is the message behind the message? For example, why is the client feeling angry? So, for example, do you feel angry because your husband did not tell you about him being HIV positive? So the story is that this patient has come up, is very annoyed. The husband is HIV positive, he didn't disclose. So he's angry, she's angry. So the story behind the story is that anger is as a result of non-disclosure of the HIV status from a very close person. All right, so that is advanced empathy. Immediacy, as I had mentioned, you try to see whether you can be able to stop the client from what they are saying, just to focus on particular issues. And always, as the rule of the thumb, use the I, so that you're not telling the client that, you see, whatever you're explaining, you're not explaining it well, but you say, probably, kindly help me understand. Or I'm a bit confused. Could you come again? Could you explain it a little further? When you say that way, you remove the burden from the client, thinking that they're doing